Now in this video I will show you how I turned my messy miter saw workbench into this much more functioning floating miter saw station filled with functions such as an integrated T-track with stop blocks, a multi-port dust collection system, an acrylic dust hood, and much more. You might ask yourself, why doesn't the guy just take the time and clean up his darn mess and call it a day? Well, unfortunately it's not that easy. I slammed this together in the matter of a weekend from a bunch of 2x4s and a couple sheets of OSB. And while it worked in the beginning, it became crystal clear over the years that this setup is not going to work for me in the long run. Here are a couple of the problems that I have with this. First, if we zoom in here, you can see how the middle section here is simply attached with a couple of screws to the vertical 2x4. Now over the years this became a problem. Because of the weight of the miter saw and the way it was attached, it started to sag, which then of course caused a misalignment. Now that being said, it never was properly aligned in the first place because the concrete floor where everything is sitting on is far from level. Now furthermore, the 2x4s that I used as a fence moved over the years, so altogether we have some major alignment issues going on. Now let's talk about the miter saw itself. This is the Dewalt S779 double bevel sliding compound miter saw, an absolute fantastic woodworking tool with two major problems. One is, in order to accommodate the saw on a workbench that sits right against the wall, you need at least 32 inch in depth, which is a lot. Now the other problem is the dust collection is routed in the worst way possible. If you actually want to use it, you have to add another couple inches to your workbench just to reroute the direction for your dust collection hose. Or you just don't use it at all and live in a dusty mess like I did, which is probably the worst solution you can choose. I guess this saw is really meant to be used on a portable miter saw stand on a construction site where none of those factors really matter. Which I tried, by the way, but it's just not my thing. I need more of a permanent setup for my shop. Here we have another problem. The post to the left and right didn't allow me to fully rotate the saw, which always was super annoying. You can see a simple cleanup is not going to fix my problems. I will have to start from scratch, so let's get rid of this mess. Because I don't want to deal with the uneven concrete floor or the awkward foam curb from the ICF foundation wall, I decided to build a floating workbench. For that I will need 4 braces, and I'm using solid birch for that. Here you can see me using my table saw to cut a tenon, and after gluing the joint I added a couple oak dowels to add even more strength to it. For the actual brace I used a jigsaw to cut out sort of a bird mouth notch for the brace to sit in, and to create a similar pocket for the thinner board that will be mounted to the wall, I glued on another piece to the bottom. Now this way I don't have to rely on the shear strength of a screw, and gravity will keep everything in place. I painted all of them black just to match the theme, and then I started to install them. I definitely spent my time here to make sure they're anchored in the center of the studs. Since nothing in this house seems to be plumb or level, I had to shim some of them, not really a big deal though. I wanted to make sure that those braces are going to be plenty strong enough, and as of right now I'm 190 pounds, and as you can see they don't even move a millimeter, so that's going to be good enough for me. Now I could deal with the horizontal blocking, and for that I just used a couple chunks of 2x4s from the original workbench. Now this time I didn't want to use wood for the front. I wanted to create a really low profile front frame that just will never sag and move on me. So I bit the bullet and spent 60 bucks on some 1¼ inch square tubing and went to work. Well, I just realized that I messed up. I welded those tabs in the wrong spot. They were supposed to be right in the middle here to offer some support for the plywood that is going to be sitting on the frame. I'm not going to start welding on this now because it's already all painted, so I'm just going to improvise, and I think I'm going to just install a diagonal brace. It will work too. Well, mistakes happen, and this one will not be visible later on, so it wasn't the end of the world. Now, plywood those days is not cheap, so I didn't feel like buying a fresh sheet. Instead, I reused the material from the original bench, which meant that I had to puzzle pieces together to fully cover the surfaces, and some of those pieces had nasty oil stains, but none of this mattered since this is just the foundation. Next, I installed some raised trim made from solid birch to surround every surface, and to finish the top I used old laminate flooring. I had 2 packages sitting in the garage for years now, and I figured this would be the perfect opportunity to use them up. Not only is the laminate flooring surface very durable and easy to clean up, but it also happened to have the same height as the T-tracks that I ordered on Amazon. Now that made it extremely easy to install, since I only had to cut out a little notch in the trim instead of using a router to cut out a groove along the entire bench. Now you probably noticed that I have a different miter saw, so let's talk about this real quick. I sold the Dewalt miter saw and bought the BOSCH GCM 12SD instead, because it addresses both of the problems that I had with the Dewalt. First, the dust collection port doesn't exit in the back, but on the side instead, so now I actually have a chance to use it. And it uses this super unique and genius mechanism to move the blade, which saves a lot of space. So that allowed me to build a workbench that is only 22-inch deep instead of the 32-inch. Now that might not sound like a lot, but keep in mind the workbench is over 10.5 feet long, so we'll talk about 9 square foot that I'm saving, and that is a lot. That makes a difference. Just as a reference, the tool chest that I built recently on this channel takes up 8 square foot in space. Yeah, so there you have it. That's the reason why I switched from Dewalt to BOSCH. Alright, so next on the list was to build a dust hood. I thought it would be a good idea and look cool to use some of the plexiglass that I had kicking around, which came from old storm windows. Now to hold the plexiglass, I needed a frame for it to sit on, so I built this jig to glue up a big arch made from 12 strips. Now I let the glue dry overnight before I removed the clamps, and then I moved on to the table saw to clean up the edges and to remove excess material. And things slowly started to take shape. Okay, so the dust hood is ready. It works fantastic. I tried it already for a couple days. As we all know, miter saw dust collection is never going to be perfect. There's always going to be some dust behind the saw, but at least with the hood it's contained into a certain area. Now, speaking of dust collection system, I decided to go with a dedicated shop vac instead of one of those big dust collectors, and that decision is based on a fantastic video from a channel called YouCanMakeThisToo. I will try to put a link in the video description, and I highly encourage you to watch that if you want to learn something about dust collection in a small woodworking shop. Anyways, I also bought this cyclone bucket, and I like that one in particular because it's made from clear plastic. That way you always know where you're at with your dust level, which is super convenient. I got that one from KMS Tools. Now, another essential upgrade that I did was buying this automatic vacuum switch. That thing is fantastic too. You plug in your saw and your vacuum will kick in with a 1 second delay after you start your saw. That way you avoid a circuit overload. And it will keep running for 7 seconds once you turn off your saw, and that will clean out your vacuum hose, which again is super convenient. I decided to permanently install both of my bench grinders on the workbenches, as well as my belt and disc sander and my scroll saw with a simple fold-down mechanism. Now ideally I have dust collection on all of them, but of course I don't want to buy multiple shop vacs for that, so another solution had to be found. Now I really wish I could claim this idea as mine, but the first time I saw this multi-dust collection port that I'm about to build here was on a channel called Well Done Tips. Now I'm not sure if this guy came up with this or if he saw that somewhere else, but it's a pretty cool video. Now he's using proper sized PVC pipe as hose fittings, which is something I don't have kicking around. But it turns out that those empty spray cans are just over 2.5 inches, so it will be a bit of a snug fit, but it should work. Now this is so simple and yet so genius. Now I can use one vacuum for multiple tools, and all I have to do is redirect the flow by moving the hose like that. And the neodymium magnets will make sure you have a proper lineup and a snug fit. Now don't forget to plug in all your tools into the automatic vacuum switch. You just will have to use some sort of power strip to create more outlets. Okay, so now we have dust collection for the miter saw, the disc and belt sander, and the scroll saw. I can't use dust collection on this bench grinder because of the sparks creating a fire hazard, but I think I could use some on the second bench grinder with the wire wheel and the buffer wheel, so let's tackle that next. What I basically needed was sort of a nozzle that collects the dust where it's actually being produced, which is right at the front, at the contact point and below. Now I didn't want the hose to be in my way, so I built this wooden box that allows me to route the port out the back. I glued in a couple chunks of 3/4 inch rebar just to add some weight to it, and then I covered it with a sheet of black plastic. Now the vibration of the bench grinder still moved the nozzle around, so I added this angle iron with a plastic rail that hooks into the T-track, and that kept it from moving. Now, even though I added all of that dust collection, the best weapon to protect my lungs will always be the Power Cap Active. If you have a beard like me, a conventional mask will never create a tight enough seal around your face, so you always will breathe in some dust. Now, the Power Cap works around that by creating a positive air pressure by pulling air through the filters, pumping clean fresh air right into your face before it exits down at your chin. Now the only problem is I misplace the damn thing non-stop, so very often I just work without it. So it's really time to give this a dedicated home somewhere where it's really hard to overlook. I use my miter saw every single day, and the dust hood is kind of an eye catcher, so I thought that would be a good spot. I made the mask holder from a dowel, a piece of plywood, and a chunk of foam that I glued on, and I cut it in shape with a bread knife. I think that will do the trick. Okay, we are on the final stretch now. I still had lots of room under the workbench and plenty of material left, so let's do something with that. Well, thank you very much for watching. I know this one was a bit longer than usual. It took a couple weeks to produce too, so I hope I didn't stretch out your patience too much. I will actually take that as an opportunity and give you a couple recommendations in case you do get tired of waiting for videos on this channel. So first we have Lee from Knuckle Woodworks. I love the name, I love the guy, he has a great sense of humor. And then we have Jared from Inland Wood Resin, also a super cool woodworking channel. And the two of them together created actually a podcast on YouTube, and that channel is called the New Cranky Workshop, where they address topics across the woodworking world and YouTube in a really unfiltered and honest manner, so it's quite enjoyable. Go check it out. Alright, so that was it for today. Take care, my friends, until the next time.